Charlie Kirk's old show, there was like a guest host in honor of him after he was killed last week. And that guest host was the Vice President of the United States. He said a lot of inflammatory things and threatened political retaliation and prosecution, left-wing activists broadly because of this killing. They're trying really hard to manufacture consent for an authoritarian free speech crackdown. They've been trying to incite reactions to ICE officers, to the National Guardsmen that are coming into cities as a pretext for further authoritarianism.
I mean, look at the hyping up of the assault on Big Balls. Look at the way they were treating this Ukrainian refugee, which is the first time any of them have shown any compassion for a refugee.
Yep. Well, she was a white woman.
Right, which definitely helps. And they are looking for warrants, basically. This is their same interest in supposedly human trafficking, which, as I said earlier, there's a big article about how they're turning all the agents that had been on that beat, pretty important thing to be looking into, pretty nasty crimes. They're turning them into, see who's undocumented in a kitchen somewhere.
Exactly right. And I, in terms of like the popular sentiment about this, I already see the story kind of fading. And I think in part that's due to the fact that Trump is deploying J.D. Vance for in the keeping with in the tradition of Biden giving the vice president all of the unsavory tasks. Is trying to get sending him out there, and he just doesn't have the juice to kind of manufacture consent for the vengeance that they're talking about. But Trump doesn't care about Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was asked about how he's holding up about his death, and he talked about the construction of the White House ballroom.
Look at those trucks.
Yes, bringing in all that gold. Or gold-plated. We got to be cheap here, folks. And, then he skipped his Kennedy Center vigil as well. The Republicans, their turn towards authoritarianism is extremely reliant on Trump using the bully pulpit. And I don't think he's doing it very effectively in this case. So J.D. Vance has this task, and he's a charisma vacuum, and no one cares what he has to say. But the guy that's closest to Donald Trump is Stephen Miller. And there was a great piece in Rolling Stone I'll read some excerpts from, basically showing that he's the shadow president on all of these matters. And he's a legitimate Nazi. So he was the guest on the Charlie Kirk show, hosted by J.D. Vance, the vice president. And this was what he had to say about, what the plans are after this killing.
What emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say. I mean, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
you got 30 seconds. So be quick, Stephen.
The organized
wrap it up, Stephen.
The organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Thank you, Stephen. Don't go away. I'll be joined by a guest.
Great mic work. They all want to be podcasters. What? It's Ted Cruz now wanting to be a podcaster. It's now, I guess, J.D. Vance, and we have a podcaster who's the head of the FBI.
The hours are nice.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, right, especially if you just go up there and just shoot the shit and don't care if you're saying anything true or not. We'll get to that in just a sec, because Tom Tillis, when questioning Kash Patel, makes a good point, and the reason that he's able to say this is because he's a Republican that is retiring. But this Rolling Stone piece from Sunday on Stephen Miller talks about him and shows the influence that he has on the president in great detail. It's called Inside Stephen Miller's Reign of Terror by Asawin Subasang, Nikki McCammon Ramirez, Andrew Perez. More than 7 months into Trump's term, Stephen Miller has become America's, if not the world's, most powerful unelected bureaucrat. With Trump's blessing, Miller has been allowed to run and remake the country in a manner virtually unheard of for a U.S. government official of his rank. Think any egregious policy from the Trump administration, chances are it was driven by Stephen Miller. All of it bears Trump's signature, but the president is not the one spending his nights writing executive orders and bending legal theory to his will. We know he's spending his time watching television or golfing or sleeping.
How about them Yankees?
YMCA.
It's fun to stay at though.
All of it bears Trump's signature. As I mentioned. Nearly all of this bears the authorship, or at least co-authorship, of Miller. Everything you loathe or love about Donald Trump's America, you hate or cherish about Stephen Miller's Republic of Fear. Under Miller's guiding hand, the government can deport or kidnap or rendition you or your spouse without due process to a foreign gulag if the president feels like it. The White House can repeatedly threaten to take away the most basic of constitutional protections, such as habeas corpus. The president can launch Justice Department criminal investigations against his enemies, who, by all known accounts, did nothing wrong except annoy the commander-in-chief or refuse to help him steal an election, et cetera, et cetera. But there's more. They talk a lot about, we mentioned Gene Guerrero's book about Stephen Miller growing up in California and his deep anti-Latino sentiment from having Latino classmates, but also how he was radicalized as a Zionist and anti-Muslim extremist in college. The article goes over that. But they talk about how he berates all of their colleagues and more, and cites him as influencing some of the most insane decisions that Trump has made, including it was he, according to this reporting, that floated the suspension of habeas corpus. Miller has no legal background, but according to Trump officials, Miller was the mastermind behind Trump's ploy to use the Alien Enemies Act to conduct mass deportations without due process, a plot he detailed in 2023 during an interview with conservative radio hosts Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Miller was also the first member of the administration to publicly suggest the suspension of habeas corpus, as I mentioned. And there's another part of this piece. I don't have it here, but it talks about maybe. Can you look up the Immigration Act of 1924? Word search that. Thank you. This is the part I wanted to also highlight. Miller speaks almost exclusively in apocalyptic terms, in the caricatured language of military combat, forever war, and invasion against the culture and the homeland. He's
a Camp of the State-style Nazi that came out in the Breitbart emails in 2017.
He's yearned to erect a vast hyper-militarized network of what he's dubbed camps for detention and mass deportation, a network he hopes will change the American political and physical landscape forever. Miller, who is Jewish, has been denounced by his own uncle as a one-man betrayal of Jewish moral and political values. Miller has long held the deepest admiration for the Immigration Act of 1924 and wishes to bring America back to those days. The law is notorious for making the Holocaust deadlier for Jews who tried to flee the Nazis, only to be denied safe passage to the U.S. And that's accurate, because that was the Johnson-Reed Act. It's extremely racist. It limited immigration to 2% of the number of people from the nationality that was already in the United States. So it was 2% of a proportion of people in the United States. And they used the 1890 census in this 1924 Act, which is important to know because they could have used the 1910 census, which was the more recent one. They were doing it every 20 years at that point. But they didn't, because by that point, there were more Italians, there were more Jews, there were more Polish people, Greeks, people from Southern, Eastern Europe as well. The act also explicitly banned Asian immigrants, Japanese immigrants.
Came in.
And what'd you say?
The Drumps came in.
Yes, right. Thank you.
And the Lex also, I'll just say, in that period.
To John Oliver's credit, that was also he's talking about how that was cringe now, so he's walked that back, the drum thing. But even I had a drum hat. I hate to admit that, but I've grown out of that. Hopefully, still a little bit cringe, but. Then in the 1960s, basically, that is when they abolished these quotas based on race. And Stephen Miller wants to return to the time when we had racial quotas for immigration, even though it affected Jews. And we turned boats away of Jews fleeing the Holocaust because of this racist act. And that is his vision for America. And we're well on our way.
But they were refugees. That's icky.
Right.
They're infecting us.
And you just see how it'll be in 100 years, there will be nativists that pick a different group that is poisoning the blood of America. This is his ideology. And he's trying to use any pretext that he can to effectuate that, including, obviously, the killing of Charlie Kirk. But as a contrast, this is what Tillis, who is freed to say sort of what he wants, at least now. It's not perfect, but in the Kash Patel hearings, pointing out how the Trump administration is directly inflaming the rhetoric in this country right now.
Within 24 hours of Mr. Kirk's shooting, we had the guy that does the podcast for the War Room and another guy who's denied the Sandy Hook shootings say we're at war. Now, how on earth, and I do believe it's a smaller number, but it's a number that has an influence. How on earth are we de-escalating the situation with the tensions as high as they were last week with going out and saying we're at war? I'm not asking you to respond to this question. I'm just saying that there are people out here on our side of the aisle that still need to look in the mirror. Even if you agree that it's a lower number, bad is bad no matter how many numbers they are. And that kind of rhetoric and that kind of mobilization makes your job more difficult and puts us in a position where we're not being as productive as you want the FBI and state and local law enforcement to be.
Well, that's if you actually care about the FBI functioning in a way that isn't just about persecuting Donald Trump's political enemies. I mean, he doesn't have an interest in really the FBI's functioning. We have many, many critiques of the FBI. I mean,
oh no, the FBI won't be able to go after human traffickers. I would hate if that was the case.
The FBI, the idea that the FBI has been in any way left wing is the most counter-historical, false statement I could ever think of. The FBI was blackmailing Martin Luther King. The FBI was responsible for the killing of left-wing civil rights leader Fred Hampton. The FBI was likely responsible for the killing of Malcolm X. And there were some other police officers who allowed that to happen quite conveniently. The FBI has the resources dedicated to targeting activism for Black Lives Matter. We had, I think, Trevor Aronson on the show talking about how the FBI had informants in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
You think they're
anti-war movement?
Yeah,
I mean, just
yes.
mosques.
Right. Exactly.
But what he's saying there, he's like, that is like as close as you can get to Republican courage there by Tillis.
Right.
And as you said, it's because he's not going to be running for office in the future. But even there, he has to couch it with a lie, which is to say, and look, I agree it's a smaller number. What he's saying is it's a smaller number, that there's more on wackos on the left than there is on the right. And that is a lie that he must have to say for them to like get them to continue listening to him. But this is from the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. Murders by politically motivated terrorism excluding 9/11. The number one is right wing by 300. It's 391 total counted here.
Yeah.
63%, almost 2/3. Islamism is 143, and the left is 65. So only 10%. So this is just a lie, and it is an important lie because it's one that they're using toward their political agenda, which got gummed up in the gears of having all these people like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel implicated in a cover-up of sex trafficking ring. And now, you know, it's Charlie Kirk lubricate the wheels again and get the sort of tank back on the tracks.
Right. Ramona Frankenstein said the FBI probably killed Martin Luther King as well. Yeah, that's true. There's the listen to the MLK Files. There's a great podcast on that front. And also, Illuminati Kids writes in, if it was up to you, would you keep the FBI around at all? I do think that there is a function for a federal police service, but obviously it would need major reform. The problem with the FBI is, of course, that it's kind of rotten in many ways in terms of the groups that it was targeting from its outset. But there have been reforms. It would need a lot more oversight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good person to ask that question would be Chip Gibbons of Defending Rights and Dissent. What should be done about the FBI? Because yes, I don't think it's leave it to the states.
Yeah, I don't want there to not be a federalized police force and just have Mississippi police be the final say on the crimes that are happening there, including, in an ideal world, the FBI could lead an investigation to this lynching that we just saw, but not in Trump's America.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.